Hello everybody, it's Kendra here. Welcome back to This DIY Mom Life. Today is part 4 of my series on knitting basics. So to recap, in case you missed it, part 1 was all about the knitting supplies you need to get started. Part 2 was all about the knit stitch. Part 3 all about the purl stitch. And today in part 4 we are going to go over how to fix basic knitting mistakes.
So there are times in your knitting where you'll notice you made a mistake. It's inevitable, and really all you do is need to know how to fix some of the most common mistakes that come up when you're knitting. I will say my favorite tool for fixing knitting mistakes is a crochet hook. I just use this one that's fairly small, but you probably just want it to be smaller than the tools that you're working with. However, yeah, not too picky on that. It will show you how to pick up stitches with your knitting needles as well, but a crochet hook really is a valuable tool. So if you watch my previous videos, I've recommended you count your stitches and make sure it's the same every round. So I had cast on 10 stitches, and every time at the end of the row, I want to stop and count to make sure I still have 10 stitches. However, right now I have 9, and in looking at this, you can see that my problem is right here. This stitch is dropped. A drop stitch is probably the most common mistake to come up, and the sooner you catch it the better, and that's really why I recommend that you stop and count so that you can catch it as soon as possible. So when you find that, what you want to do is knit to where your problem is. So I am going to knit the first 2 stitches here. And if you want to learn how to knit, my last video in this knitting basics series is all about how to knit. And I'm going to use my needle to pick up this stitch. So you can see that way down here, this loop is loose and it didn't get picked up, or maybe it fell down as you were knitting and it dropped down this many rows, 3 rows down. You can see there's 3 lines in behind. Pull it out so you can see it a little better. This is the loop that came down, and now there's 3 rows that missed this stitch. So I am going to show you with the crochet hook first, because to me it is the easiest way to fix it. So if you're on the knitting side, the knit side, rather than the back is the purl side, the way you want to fix it is by sticking your crochet hook into your loop, and then you find that first row that was skipped, and there's just a little bit of the yarn. So whether you knit it and then dropped it down, you might have a little bit more yarn versus if you were knitting in the round before you noticed. But either way, you put your crochet hook into the loop and you pick up that stitch and you put it on top. So now it looks like you have 2 loops on top. One is the actual loop and one is just the yarn. And you pull the yarn through the loop. That creates 1 stitch. Now we have to do the next row that was skipped, and so you have this loop on your crochet hook, you put it underneath the next row of yarn, and you pull it through. Now the very last one, same thing, put it under and you pull the yarn through the loop to create the loop at the top. So this is the very last one. You put the crochet hook under, you pull the yarn through the loop, and now it's on your crochet hook, and you're going to slide it on your knitting needle, ready to be knit on this round. So if you keep going and you do a few more stitches, it should completely cover it up. And if you notice there's some issues where it looks a little bit looser or tighter, you can always kind of go in there with your hook or your needle after and just kind of try to make it lay a little bit flatter. If it was really tight, you can just try to move the yarn around a little bit so that it is seamless. So I do also want to go over what happens if you do not have a crochet hook or you still want to fix your knitting. So I'm going to intentionally drop this stitch. You can see it's becoming unknit as it goes down. I'll go down a few rows here. And you're essentially doing the same thing that you did with your crochet hook. You just don't have the hook to help you. So maybe you come up to your knitting and you see this happening, and you need to pull this loop all the way back up so you're ready to knit it again. Go ahead and put that loop on your right hand needle, and you're doing the same thing like I said with the crochet hook, where you stick the needle under the next row of yarn, and then you're taking the loop and pulling it over so that now the loop is on the next row. You put the right needle under the next, these are called ladders, under the next ladder of yarn. And then I'm just using my right hand needle to slide the back loop and pull it over the front one. Now we have 2 more to do. put it under like this, take the back loop over the front loop, and last one, back loop over the front loop. Now you're ready to work this stitch, so I put it back on my left needle so that I can complete my current row's stitch. Another common mistake that happens is that you accidentally knit 2 stitches together. So in this example here, you count your stitches at the end of the row and you realize you only have 9. But in looking through, you don't see any drop stitches. And so maybe you're wondering what happened. Well, part of that is going to be to study carefully and see each knit should be coming from a whole column of stitches that look the same. And sometimes when you're looking, you'll notice there's 2 columns of stitches that lead into 1 stitch. And that means that you must have knit 2 together or purled 2 together if you're on the other row. So to fix this, I typically, if it happened within the last couple rows, will go ahead and knit to where I found the problem. And then I undo this stitch by taking it. You can see it just happened in the last row. So I will pull those stitches undone, and I want to right away pick them up just so that they don't end up running down deeper. Now we're going to do the same thing we did when we dropped 1 stitch by knitting them both back up to our current row. So I'm going to start with this one, this first stitch here, and it only has 1 row to make up. So like I did in the last time, I have both loops, the loop of the stitch and then the working yarn from the last row, and I take the back loop, pull it over the front loop. Now that stitch is all cut up, so I'm putting it on my left needle. On this one, I caught it after it went down another row, so I've got 2 stitches to make back up, but I have to do them one at a time. So I have the loop, I catch the working yarn, and I pull the back loop over the front, and then I have to repeat that to get it back up. And when you look at the back, there should be no lines. If I were to have dropped this stitch and I didn't notice it had dropped down 2 instead of 1 and only did the top row, when I look at the back, I will see that I skipped it. There's a row, a little line of yarn where this yarn didn't get knit where it should have. So where it is proper on the back, it will look bumpy every row, and where you skipped one, there will be a little line of yarn, and that's another sign that you did something wrong, and it's probably best to fix right away. So when that happens, if maybe you found that first before you realize something was up, you can just pull it back down and then start again. Get that first row that was missed, and you're going to slide the loops over to get you back up to your current row without any mistakes. One of the best things about knitting is that there's a lot you can do where you can make mistakes and you can fix them and you can't tell you made the mistakes. This is all this same square and you can't tell where I've dropped all these stitches and pick them back up again. Now there are some mistakes in knitting that aren't as easy to fix, and if you do find that you need to rip back, maybe you forgot to increase or forgot to decrease, something like that is not easily fixed or you went too far, one of the ways you can rip it out is to do it step by step. So if you look at the stitch that you just knit, you can see this loop on the right needle is the current stitch, and this loop right underneath is the previous stitch. So by sticking my left needle into the previous stitch and putting it on this needle, I'm going to let go of the loop on my right needle and pull my yarn. And that transfers it back a row. You just undid that stitch you had previously knit. Again, this isn't a great, this is just if you made a mistake and you need to go back. You put your needle in the loop from the previous round, and then you kind of transfer it over, pull your yarn to undo it, and repeat. Sometimes there are mistakes made. Maybe you found a mistake way down here that you need to rip all the way back, and it is best, and it sometimes is scary, to take it off your needle and pull your string, and this is a way you can kind of quickly get back a few rows. So when that happens, the most important thing is to be careful and delicate so that you are not undoing more than you should, and so that you can see all these loops. When you start getting them all kind of off kilter, where some are dropping lower, it becomes a lot more problematic. So then you can take your needle, and you do want to check which side your working yarn's on, especially if you're using straight needles, and you just go through and pick up each of your loops. So now you can carry on your way once they're back on. Again, I'm alternating knit rows and purl rows, and I can carry on after I picked up my stitches. And that is how you fix a mistake in your knitting.
I really hope you found today's video helpful. Knitting mistakes happen whether you are brand new or experienced, and it really can make a difference if you know how to fix them and you don't have to just kind of give up and start again. If you have any questions, please leave them down below and I will do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye!